The thing about dying in the Caribbean sun is that everything becomes impossibly vivid in those final moments. The blood looks redder, the water looks bluer, and the smoke from gunpowder, well, it chokes you just a little bit more completely than you ever thought possible. It's August 15th, 1718, and Captain Jonathan Bartholomew, though everyone calls him Mad Jack, a nickname he's never particularly liked, is learning this lesson in the most brutal way imaginable. The morning started promising enough. His ship, the Savage Fortune, was making good time through what should have been friendly waters off Jamaica. Then the wind died, just stopped. And if you know anything about sailing ships in the age of sail, you know that no wind means you're essentially a sitting duck. A very expensive, very vulnerable sitting duck, loaded with stolen Spanish silver. The HMS Retribution found them 2 hours after the wind quit. Now, here's where you need to understand something about naval warfare in the early 18th century. This isn't like the movies. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion heroics. It's chaos, pure, screaming, bloody chaos. And the biggest problem, the thing that's killing Bartholomew's men right now, this very second, is that flintlock weapons are, well, they're terrible. Picture this. You've got a pistol, one shot. You fire it at the enemy. Maybe you hit something. Probably you don't, because you're on a moving ship in combat, and your hands are shaking, and there's smoke everywhere. Now you need to reload. You need to pour powder down the barrel carefully, because if you spill it, that shot is wasted. Then you need to wrap a ball in cloth, push it down with a ramrod, pull out the ramrod, prime the pan, cock the hammer. And if you're really good, if you're one of the best gunners in the Caribbean, you might do this in 25 seconds. Most men? 30 seconds. Some take 45. 45 seconds where you're holding a fancy-shaped club while the enemy is shooting at you. Bartholomew watches Thomas Hartley, his friend, since they were boys in Bristol, the man who taught him to tie a proper bowline, the man who stood witness at his wedding take a musket ball through the throat. Thomas is still trying to reload his pistol when he falls. The ramrod clatters on the deck, unused. The powder spills into the growing pool of blood. 23 men die in 90 seconds. Think about that. 90 seconds. The time it takes you to brew a cup of coffee. The time it takes to tie your shoes and grab your keys. In that span of time, nearly a quarter of Bartholomew's crew is dead or dying. And the only reason the number isn't higher is because the British gunners on the Retribution need time to reload too. Bartholomew himself takes a musket ball through his left shoulder while he's desperately trying to load his second pistol. His second pistol, because like every pirate who wants to survive more than one engagement, he carries six pistols, because that's 6 shots before you're reduced to waving a cutlass around and hoping for the best. The rich pirates, the successful ones, they wear these elaborate baldric's leather straps crisscrossed over their chests, festooned with pistols like some kind of deadly bandolier. It looks dramatic. It's also an admission of complete technological inadequacy. But here's the thing about Jonathan Bartholomew that makes him different from every other pirate captain in the Caribbean. Before he was Mad Jack, before he was a captain, before he turned to piracy, he was a clockmaker's apprentice. 3 weeks earlier, Port Royal, Jamaica. Let me take you back. Bartholomew isn't thinking about death. He's thinking about time. Specifically, he's thinking about how a watch spring works, how tension creates potential, how release creates motion, how the same principle that makes a clock tick might just. But no. He loses the thought. As Samuel Morrison, the 12-year-old powder monkey, everyone calls Quick Sam, rushes past, carrying another load of gunpowder cartridges down to the gun deck. You want to understand how desperate the situation is aboard pirate vessels. They're using children, 12-year-old boys running through combat zones carrying explosive materials. Quick Sam is fast, hence the nickname, but he's also terrified every single second of every single battle. His job is to run powder from the magazine to the gun crews, and if he's not fast enough, men die. If he trips, everyone might die, because those powder cartridges could explode. If he's too fast and careless, the sparks from burning powder that are constantly floating through the air on a gun deck could turn him into a running torch. The gun deck of a pirate ship during battle is hell. I mean that literally. It's dark except for the muzzle flashes. The smoke is so thick you can't see 3 feet in front of you. The heat is unbearable. You're in the Caribbean, you're below deck, and there are cannons firing continuously, each one generating enough heat to bake bread. The noise is so loud it's not even sound anymore, it's just this constant physical pressure against your eardrums. And everywhere, constantly, there are these tiny burning specks of gunpowder floating through the air like demonic fireflies, burning into your skin, blinding you temporarily if they hit your eyes, setting fire to anything flammable. Miguel Santos, everyone calls him Steady Hands, and it's not ironic, is the master gunner. He's Portuguese, been at sea for 30 years, and he can load a pistol in 20 seconds. 20 seconds. That's extraordinary. That's the difference between being a normal crew member worth maybe 30 pieces of 8 a year and being valuable enough that captains actually negotiate for your services. Santos makes more than some ships' officers purely because he can shave 10 seconds off his reload time. 10 seconds of not being defenseless. 10 seconds that might keep you alive. Think about what that means for a society. Your value as a human being, your worth, your survival, depends on how quickly you can shove a metal ball down a tube. The class system aboard pirate ships, and yes, even pirates have class systems, revolves entirely around reload speed. The men who can reload fast enough to fire twice in a battle? They're gods. Everyone else is cannon fodder. Back to August 15th. Back to the dying. The retribution is closing for the kill. Bartholomew can see the British gunners through the smoke, and he hates them for their discipline, for their training, for their systematic approach to murder. They're firing in volleys, one group shoots while another reloads, creating this continuous stream of metal death. It's effective. It's horrifying. It's everything the scattered, desperate pirates can't match. Bartholomew's shoulder is screaming. The ball went clean through, which is good, no need for surgery, but the pain is making his vision blur. His hands are slick with blood. His blood, Thomas's blood. Blood from men whose names he can't remember right now. He tries to grab the ramrod for his pistol again. It slips. He tries again. It slips. 30 seconds of being helpless. 30 seconds of watching the enemy prepare to fire again. Something breaks inside him. Not his spirit, his understanding. He suddenly sees, with perfect clarity, exactly how stupid this all is. They're all trapped in this technological nightmare where the weapon itself is the enemy, where the time required to prepare for battle is what kills you, where innovation stopped decades ago and everyone just accepted that this is how it has to be. A fog bank appears off the port side. Gift from God, curse from the devil, doesn't matter. Bartholomew screams orders through the smoke. The savage Fortune, crippled, bleeding from a dozen holes in her hull, limps toward the grey sanctuary. The Retribution fires one more broadside. The sound is like the world ending. 3 more men die. Then they're in the fog. The grey closes around them like a curtain. The sound of British cannons fades to dull thumps in the distance. Bartholomew collapses against the mainmast, his ruined shoulder sending lightning bolts of agony through his body. Quick Sam appears beside him, eyes wide with terror and something else. Hope, maybe, or just shock. Bartholomew grabs the boy's shirt with his good hand and pulls him close. His voice is rough, damaged by smoke and screaming. The words come out somewhere between a promise and a prayer. "I'm going to fix this," he says. "I'm going to end the tyranny of the ramrod." The boy doesn't understand. Not yet. Nobody does. But they will. So, you've just survived a battle that killed a quarter of your crew. You're wounded. Your ship is barely afloat. You're a wanted man in every civilized port in the Caribbean. What do you do? If you're Jonathan Bartholomew, you disappear. It's October 1718. 2 months after the Retribution nearly sent him to the bottom of the Caribbean. 2 months of hiding in fog banks and sailing by night, of avoiding British patrols and Spanish warships, of watching men die from infected wounds because you can't risk going anywhere near a proper surgeon. The savage Fortune is gone, scuttled in a storm, taking 7 more men with her. But Bartholomew has something new. The Santa Isabella, Spanish merchant vessel. captured 3 weeks prior off the coast of Hispaniola. Big enough to be useful, small enough to be handled by a skeleton crew, and currently sailing toward an island that most maps don't even bother to name, Little Cayman, uninhabited, surrounded by coral reefs that make it murder to approach if you don't know the channels, covered in mangroves that create perfect natural camouflage. It's about to become the strangest workshop the Caribbean has ever seen. Here's where the story gets interesting. Because Bartholomew doesn't just arrive at Little Cayman with his remaining crew. He arrives with an idea that most people would call insane. He's going to reinvent the pistol. He's going to solve a technological problem that has stumped gunsmiths and military engineers for over a century. He's going to do this while hiding from 3 colonial navies, with limited supplies, on an island where the primary inhabitants are mosquitoes and land crabs. And somehow, impossibly, he's going to succeed. But first, he needs help. Not just any help, he needs the kind of expertise that doesn't exactly advertise itself in the Caribbean of 1718. Chen Wei arrives first. He's Chinese, which is rare enough in the Caribbean to make him memorable anywhere he goes. He's also running for his life from Portuguese slavers, who captured him from a merchant ship bound for Manila. Chen Wei knows gunpowder. Not the European version that's half charcoal and unreliable, the Chinese version that's been refined over 6 centuries. He understands ratios. He understands crystallization. He understands things about powder that European gunsmiths treat as secret knowledge handed down from master to apprentice. Bartholomew finds him in a Kingston tavern 3 days before the slavers do. The negotiation is simple. "Help me change the world," Bartholomew says, "or die in a Portuguese silver mine." Chen Wei chooses revolution. Marcus Williams arrives next, and his story is darker. The crew calls him the Forge, partly because he's a blacksmith, partly because everything about him seems forged from something harder than normal human material. He's African Igbo, specifically brought to Barbados as a slave when he was 15. He worked the sugar plantations for 7 years before his master discovered he had a gift, not just for basic blacksmithing, but for metalwork that approached art. The kind of precision work that could repair a ship's chronometer or craft a pluk musket barrel that shot true every time. His master made a mistake. He gave Marcus access to tools, real tools, quality steel and proper forges and time to work. He thought the chains and the threat of punishment would be enough to keep Marcus compliant. He was wrong. Marcus escaped 2 months ago, killing 3 overseers in the process. His back carries the scars of 200 lashes. His hands carry knowledge that most European smiths would trade their souls to possess. Tribal scarification marks cover his arms' patterns. His grandfather taught him that somehow, impossibly, translate into mathematical precision when he works metal. He folds steel the way his ancestors taught him, creating layers that are stronger and more flexible than anything European smiths produce with their single-pore methods. When Bartholomew explains what he wants to build, Marcus simply nods and says, "We will need better steel." The last member of the team is the one nobody expects. Father Francisco de Mendoza was, until 6 months ago, a Jesuit priest in Havana. Technically, he still is. The church doesn't exactly grant resignations, but Francisco developed certain interests that the Inquisition found concerning alchemy, chemistry, the properties of metals and combustion and spring tension. He became obsessed with cathedral clocks, with how the springs worked, with the mathematics of tension and release. The church called it heresy. Francisco called it natural philosophy. The disagreement ended with Francisco fleeing Havana 1 step ahead of arrest, taking with him notebooks full of observations about metal properties, chemical reactions, and spring mechanics that would make any university scholar jealous. He's 53 years old. He still wears his priest's collar. He can tell you the precise chemical composition of different steel alloys, and also hear confession. When Bartholomew finds him living in a cave on the north side of Jamaica, subsisting on fish and wild fruit, Francisco's first words are, "God has sent you." Bartholomew doesn't believe in God anymore, not after watching Thomas Hartley die, but he believes in desperate men with useful knowledge. "Can you help me build something that shouldn't be possible?" Francisco smiles. "It's not a entirely sane smile. My son, the church told me for 30 years that I was wasting my time studying springs and metals and combustion. I believe God brought me to this moment to prove them wrong. So now we have our team. A pirate captain who used to be a clockmaker. A Chinese gunpowder expert fleeing slavery. An African blacksmith who forges metal using techniques that predate European civilization. A defrocked priest whose knowledge of chemistry and mechanics rivals any university scholar. And Quick Sam, the 12-year-old powder monkey who survived the retribution and now serves as messenger, assistant, and witness to history. The Santa Isabella becomes something that has never existed before. Workshop and laboratory and home and fortress all at once. They run her into a mangrove channel on the western side of Little Cayman, camouflage her with branches and sailcloth, and start building. The first prototype takes 3 weeks. It explodes on the second test firing, sending shrapnel through the mainmast and nearly killing Chen Wei. The problem? The breech mechanism can't handle the pressure. Back to the drawing board. Prototype 2 jams after a single shot. The rotating chamber idea works, but the tolerances are wrong. The powder residue builds up and locks everything solid. Marcus spends a week learning to forge parts with tighter precision. Prototype 3 fires twice before the spring breaks. Francisco calculates the tension wrong. He spends 3 days doing mathematics on the deck planking with charcoal, muttering prayers in Latin. This is how innovation actually works. Not brilliant flashes of insight, not divine inspiration. Just failure after failure after failure, each one teaching you something new, each one bringing you marginally closer to something that might actually work. Months pass. October bleeds into November, into December. The Caribbean winter, which isn't much of a winter, honestly comes and goes. They develop their own language for parts that don't have names yet. The breech snap, for the loading mechanism. The fire throat for the chamber. The demon spring for the crucial component that keeps jamming or breaking or corroding. Prototype 12 explodes spectacularly, taking off Marcus's left thumb. He wraps the stump in cloth, cauterizes it with a red-hot knife blade while biting down on a leather strap, and is back at the forge the next morning. "We made the chamber walls too thin," he says calmly, as if losing a thumb is just part of the process. Which, apparently, it is. Prototype 23 actually works for 3 shots. 3 beautiful, perfect shots that fire in the time it would normally take to reload once. Then the mechanism jams permanently, frozen by powder residue and heat expansion. They celebrate anyway because 3 shots means the concept works. They just need to solve the fouling problem. Prototype 31 is perfect. The rotating breech design works flawlessly. The spring tension is precise. The tolerances are tight enough to prevent jamming but loose enough to account for powder residue. Marcus's folded steel barrel is stronger than anything European smiths can produce. Chen Wei's powder mixture burns cleaner and hotter. Francisco's spring design stores and releases tension with clockwork precision. They fire it 50 times in a single afternoon. 50 times without jamming, without breaking, without failing. Bartholomew cries, actual tears running down his face while he holds this impossible thing they've created. Then they take it into the ocean to test in saltwater conditions. Within 3 days, corrosion has destroyed half the internal mechanisms. The salt air, the humidity, the constant exposure to water, it's murder on any mechanism more complex than a simple flintlock. Back to the drawing board. It's September 1720. Nearly 2 years since they started. They've built 47 distinct prototypes. They've used up most of their steel. They're low on powder. Several men have deserted, unable to maintain faith in what increasingly seems like a mad quest. But Chen Wei has figured out a coating process using rendered animal fat and pine resin that protects against corrosion. Marcus has developed a new folding technique that makes parts both stronger and more resistant to water damage. Francisco has refined the spring design to require less tension while delivering more power. Prototype 48 might actually work. But Bartholomew is sick. Infection from an old wound that never quite healed properly. He's burning with fever, delirious, sweating through his clothes while Marcus and Chen Wei try to keep him cool with wet cloths. Quick Sam, 14 now, and no longer quite so quick or quite so young, sits beside him reading from Francisco's notebook, trying to keep his captain's mind engaged. It's during this fever that Bartholomew dreams of Bristol, of his master's workshop, of the music box the old man kept on his workbench, a gift from his late wife, a mechanism that played the same 12 notes over and over, powered by a cylinder that rotated and struck different pins, a cylinder that rotates. Bartholomew wakes up screaming, "The cylinder! The cylinder that turns!" Nobody understands what he's talking about. He's barely coherent, grabbing Francisco's arm with desperate strength, trying to explain what he sees in his mind. A rotating cylinder, not a rotating chamber, they've tried that. A rotating breech that loads from the side. The barrel stays fixed, aimed at the target, while the breech mechanism rotates to accept a new load. It takes 3 days to build, 3 days where Bartholomew won't sleep, won't eat, just sits with Marcus and Francisco and Chen Wei, sketching designs on paper, on wood, on any surface available. Quick Sam runs between them carrying messages, tools, components, water, food that nobody eats. The first test is on September 19th, 1720. Bartholomew loads the weapon. A distinctive snap-click sound as the breech rotates into position. He fires. The boom echoes across the empty water. Another snap-click, another boom. Snap-click boom. Snap-click boom. Miguel Santos steady hands himself, who's been watching skeptically from the background, loads his best pistol using every trick he knows. He fires 3 shots in the time it takes Bartholomew to fire 15. 15 shots. The silence after Bartholomew stops firing is profound. Everyone on deck is staring. Even the men who've been working on this for 2 years can't quite believe what they just witnessed. Francisco crosses himself. "Deus provibit," he whispers. "God will provide." Chen Wei simply nods, as if he always knew it would work eventually. Marcus grins a rare expression that shows teeth filed to points in the Igbo tradition. Now we make more. Word spreads fast in the pirate brotherhood. You can't keep something like this secret. Not completely. Coded messages in bottles. Songs sung in taverns from Nassau to Tortuga, with lyrics that seem meaningless until you know the code. Captains who hear the rumors offer money. Serious money. 10,000 pieces of 8 for the secret. 20,000. One desperate French captain offers his entire ship and everything in it. Bartholomew refuses them all. Not yet. First, they need to refine the design, make it simpler, more reliable. Make it something that can be manufactured by decent smiths without needing Marcus's genius or Francisco's knowledge or Chen Wei's expertise. It takes another 6 months. March 1721. They've created detailed plans, templates, instructions written in 7 languages because this knowledge needs to spread. They've trained 3 other smiths who can replicate the work. They've tested the weapons in every condition they can imagine. Rain, salt, spray, sand, mud, extreme heat. The Bartholomew pistol is ready, and the Caribbean is about to change forever. Here's a question for you. What happens when you suddenly give one side in a conflict a weapon that's 5 times more effective than anything their opponents have? Answer. Everything changes. March 1721. The first Bartholomew pistols leave Little Cayman aboard 3 different ships, bound for 3 different pirate captains who've proven themselves trustworthy. Well, trustworthy by pirate standards, which is admittedly a low bar. But these are captains who understand that this technology isn't just about personal advantage, it's about survival of the entire pirate way of life. Captain Anne Bonny gets the first pair. Red Anne, they call her, and not just because of her hair. She's Irish, fierce, and has a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in combat. She's also smart enough to understand what she's holding when Bartholomew personally delivers the weapons to her ship, the Revenge, anchored off the coast of Nassau. "How many shots?" she asks, examining the pistol with the eye of someone who knows weapons. 15 before reload, Bartholomew tells her. 20 if you're quick and don't mind the barrel getting hot. She looks at him like he's claimed he can fly. "You're mad." "I get that a lot." He shows her how to load it. The distinctive snap-click boom rhythm, 5 shots in rapid succession. The Spanish don't know these exist yet, neither do the British. Use that advantage wisely. Anne Bonny is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. She doesn't test the weapons on a small target. She doesn't waste the element of surprise on some minor merchant vessel. She waits 3 weeks until she gets intelligence about something worth the risk. The San Miguel, Spanish galleon, 3 masts, 120 crew, carrying a payroll for the garrison at Cartagena 60,000 pieces of 8 in coined silver, the kind of prize that would normally require a fleet to take. Anne Bonny has 40 crew members, 40 against 120. The Battle of Bloody Bay happens on April 9, 1721, in a stretch of water off the northern coast of Jamaica. It lasts 23 minutes and becomes the single most important naval engagement in pirate history. Not because of the money involved, though that's substantial, but because it proves that the rules have changed. Here's how it normally works. Pirates attack merchant vessels by getting close, firing one volley to create shock and terror, then boarding quickly before anyone can reload. Speed is everything. Hesitation means the merchant crew reloads, fires back, and suddenly you're in an actual fight instead of a quick raid. The San Miguel's captain sees the Revenge approaching and doesn't worry much. A single pirate sloop against a proper galleon? 40 crew against 120? He orders his men to prepare to repel boarders, but he's not genuinely concerned. This happens sometimes desperate pirates making stupid decisions. Then Anne Bonny's crew opens fire and doesn't stop. The Spanish survivors, there are 73 of them, eventually all tell the same story. The pirates fired continuously, not in volleys, not in organized salvos, just this relentless, impossible stream of gunfire that never paused, never slowed, never gave anyone time to recover or reload, or even think. Snap, click, boom. Snap, click, boom. Snap, click, boom. 20 pirates with Bartholomew pistols fire 300 shots in the first 5 minutes. 300. The Spanish crew, using traditional flintlocks, manages about 60 shots in the same period. And remember, they outnumber the pirates 3-1. The psychological impact is devastating. Spanish sailors start jumping overboard rather than face the relentless barrage. They're not cowards. These are professional sailors who've faced combat before. But they've never faced anything like this. It sounds like 200 attackers instead of 40. It feels like fighting against an army rather than a pirate crew. The San Miguel's captain tries to organize a defense. He's a brave man. He's also a dead man. 5 pistol balls hit him almost simultaneously as he's rallying his crew. He probably doesn't even know which shot kills him. 23 minutes after the engagement begins, the Spanish flag comes down. 73 survivors surrender. 47 men are dead or wounded. Anne Bonny's crew has 3 injuries, none fatal. The Revenge sails away with 60,000 pieces of 8, and a new reputation, Red Anne, they still call her. But now they also call her Death's Daughter, the woman whose pistols never rest. Word spreads like wildfire. Not through official channels. The Spanish certainly don't advertise that 40 pirates defeated a galleon crew. But sailors talk. They drink in taverns from Havana to Port Royal, and when sailors drink, they tell stories. And this story? This story is too incredible not to tell. Within 3 months, 5 more pirate captains have Bartholomew pistols. Within 6 months, the number rises to 15. Bartholomew isn't selling them. He's distributing them strategically, creating a network of captains who owe him loyalty, not because of threats or violence, but because he's given them the power to survive. And something unexpected starts happening. The social structure of pirate crews begins to change. Mary Cordova is a freed slave from Cuba, former cook aboard the pirate vessel Morning Star. Black Mary, everyone calls her, though never to her face after she gets her pistols. She names them Liberty and Justice, which tells you everything you need to know about Mary's worldview. In the old world, Mary's size would limit her. She's 5 feet tall, maybe 100 pounds. She can't swing a boarding axe with the force that a 6-foot man can. She can't reload a musket while hauling on a rope. In traditional pirate combat, physical strength matters almost as much as courage. But with Bartholomew pistols, steady hands matter, quick thinking matters, cool nerves matter. Physical strength? Not so much. Within 6 months of getting her pistols, Mary Cordova goes from cook to captain. She leads a mutiny against her former captain, a brutal drunk named Thomas Vane, who has a habit of beating crew members who displease him. The mutiny lasts about 30 seconds. Vane reaches for his cutlass. Mary shoots him 4 times before he can draw. The crew elects her captain by unanimous vote. This starts happening everywhere. Young pirates, who would normally need years of training to become effective fighters, are suddenly deadly after a few weeks of practice. The old hierarchy where the biggest, strongest, most experienced men dominate begins to crack. Captains who rule through fear and physical intimidation find themselves voted out or, occasionally, shot by their own crews. Women pirates increase from 1 in 50 to 1 in 20 within a single year. Think about that ratio change. It represents a fundamental shift in how pirate society works. When fighting capability depends on physical size and strength, women are at a disadvantage. When it depends on steady hands and cool nerves, the playing field levels dramatically. But here's the thing about revolutionary technology. It never stays secret for long, especially when people are dying because of it. Admiral Sir James Crawford of the Royal Navy loses 3 frigates in 2 months. 3. These are proper warships with trained crews and proper naval discipline. They shouldn't be losing to pirate vessels with half their crew size. But they are, because the pirates can maintain fire rates that trained naval gunners can't match. Crawford writes increasingly desperate letters to the Admiralty in London. You can track his descent into panic through the correspondence. April. The pirates have adopted new tactics. May. The enemy appears to have improved firearms. June. The very nature of warfare has been corrupted by these piratical innovations. July. We require immediate assistance or the Caribbean will be lost. The Admiralty responds with typical bureaucratic efficiency. They form a committee to study the problem. This committee takes 8 months to conclude that yes, the pirates do seem to have better weapons, and perhaps someone should investigate. Meanwhile, the Spanish are having their own crisis. Governor Don Carlos de Mendoza of Havana knows about the Bartholomew pistols, has known for months, and here's where it gets interesting. He secretly purchases 20 of them through intermediaries, 20 modified weapons that he immediately distributes to his personal guard. Publicly, he condemns the technology, calls it the devil's own work in official proclamations, issues edicts threatening execution for anyone caught with the weapons. But privately, he's arming his most trusted men with the same technology because he's not stupid. He knows that whoever controls this innovation controls the Caribbean. The French take a different approach. They send a spy. Madame Lucille de Montmorency arrives in Nassau, disguised as a tavern wench. She's actually a trained intelligence operative who speaks 5 languages and has successfully infiltrated 3 different colonial governments. Her mission is simple: find Jonathan Bartholomew, learn the secret, kill him if necessary, bring the knowledge back to France. She finds him within 3 weeks. Finding him isn't hard, people know who he is by now, even if they don't know exactly where Little Cayman is or what goes on there. She arranges an accidental meeting in a Kingston tavern. She's good at her job. Very good. But here's what she doesn't expect: the workshop, the multicultural brotherhood, Chen Wei teaching gunpowder chemistry to former slaves, Marcus the Forge working alongside Spanish deserters and British Navy refugees, Father Francisco hearing confession in the morning and teaching metallurgy in the afternoon, Quick Sam, now 16, speaking English, Spanish, Portuguese, and passable Chinese, while coordinating supply runs. Lucille has infiltrated courts and military headquarters. She's seen wealth and power and political intrigue. But she's never seen anything like this. A place where a man's value isn't determined by his birth or his skin color or his nationality, but by what he knows and what he can contribute. She's supposed to betray these people. Instead, she joins them. When she sends her report back to her French handlers, it reads, "Regret to inform mission unsuccessful. No intelligence available. Recommend abandoning investigation." Then she takes her code books and her remaining money and burns them on the beach, watching the smoke rise into the Caribbean sky. The climax comes in October 1723. 2 British frigates and 1 Spanish galleon, HMS Valiant, HMS Steadfast, and the San Carlos coordinate an attack on a pirate fleet near Tortuga. It's a combined operation, the first time the British and Spanish have officially cooperated in decades. That alone shows how seriously the colonial powers are taking the pirate threat. The engagement begins just as a massive storm rolls in from the east. Driving rain, waves 20 feet high, wind that tears sails and snaps rigging. In normal circumstances, this would end the battle immediately. You can't use flintlock weapons in driving rain. The powder gets wet, the pan gets wet, nothing fires, except the Bartholomew pistols have protected chambers. The loading mechanism keeps the powder dry even in heavy rain. Marcus the Forge's genius at waterproofing, combined with Chen Wei's cleaner burning powder, formula means the weapons keep functioning in conditions that would render traditional flintlocks useless. 2 pirate vessels, the Revenge under Red Ann Bonny and the Liberty under Black Mary Cordova, face 3 military warships in the middle of a tropical storm. The colonial ships can't fire. Their powder is soaked. Their crews are experienced enough to know this. They're preparing to board, to make this a close-quarters fight with cutlasses and boarding axes where their superior numbers will matter. Then the pirates open fire. The sound of gunfire in a storm is surreal, thunder and cannon fire blending together. Rain so thick you can barely see 30 feet, and through it all, that distinctive snap-click-boom rhythm, multiplied by 50 pirates firing continuously. The HMS Valiant loses her mainmast, not from cannon fire, but from concentrated pistol fire that shreds the rigging and kills everyone trying to repair it. The San Carlos tries to board the Revenge and loses 40 men in 90 seconds. Remember that number? 90 seconds. The same amount of time that nearly destroyed Bartholomew's crew 5 years ago. The HMS Steadfast manages to land some crew on the Liberty's deck, and Black Mary Cordova herself shoots 7 men in rapid succession while standing calmly at her cabin door, reloading with practiced ease between targets. The battle lasts 42 minutes. All 3 colonial ships surrender or flee. Combined casualties, 137 dead or wounded. Pirate casualties, 18 wounded, 3 dead. The reports that make it back to London and Madrid and Paris are almost incoherent. Admirals and governors struggle to explain how professional naval forces lost to pirate crews in conditions that should have completely neutralized the pirate advantage. The reports mention demonic weapons, and impossible fire rates, and technology beyond natural understanding. What they're really saying, though they don't have the words for it yet, is this: the age of traditional naval warfare is over. The rules have changed. The pirates changed them, and there's no going back. January 2nd, 1724. Jonathan Bartholomew vanishes. Not killed, not captured, not lost at sea, just gone. One night he's at the workshop in Little Cayman, working on refinements to the firing mechanism with Marcus and Chen Wei. The next morning, his bunk is empty. His personal effects are gone. The only thing he leaves behind is a message carved into the stone walls of an abandoned Spanish fort in Tortuga, a fort that the Pirate Brotherhood has been using as a meeting place and message drop. The message is in code, a code that takes Quick Sam 3 days to decipher using techniques Chen Wei taught him. When translated, it reads simply, "The gift is given. Let freedom ring with every shot." That's it. No explanation, no farewell. No instructions about what to do next, just those 11 words carved into stone, and the greatest innovator the Caribbean has ever seen is gone. People have theories, of course. Some say he sailed to the Indian Ocean, to Madagascar, where pirates still operate with relative freedom. Others claim he went to the American colonies, where a clockmaker with his skills could live comfortably under a new name. There are rumors of a mysterious Englishman who appears in China in 1726, teaching advanced metallurgy techniques to imperial craftsmen. Could be Bartholomew, could be someone else entirely. The truth is, nobody knows. And maybe that's appropriate. The man who changed everything simply walked away once his work was done, leaving others to deal with the consequences. And the consequences. Within 6 months of Bartholomew's disappearance, legitimate navies begin producing their own versions of the rapid-fire pistol. They don't call them Bartholomew pistols that would be admitting they learned from pirates. Instead, they invent new names and claim independent development. The Royal Navy invests £40,000 sterling in what they call the Crawford Improvement. Admiral Sir James Crawford, the same man who lost 3 frigates and wrote increasingly panicked letters to the Admiralty, is now being celebrated as an innovative military thinker. The Crawford Improvement is essentially a direct copy of Bartholomew's design with minor modifications to the grip angle and a slightly different spring configuration. These changes make the weapon marginally less reliable than the original, but they allow the Royal Navy to claim they invented it themselves. The marketing is brilliant in its audacity. Official Royal Navy documentation describes the Crawford Improvement as a revolutionary advance in firearms technology developed through years of rigorous naval research. There's no mention of pirates, no acknowledgement that British sailors are now carrying weapons stolen from the men they're supposed to be hunting. The historical revisionism is so complete that within a decade, most people genuinely believe the Royal Navy invented rapid-fire pistols. The Spanish take a different approach. Governor Don Carlos de Mendoza, who's been secretly using Bartholomew pistols for his personal guard, commissions a team of gunsmiths to create what he calls the Carlos system. This is the Spanish way, make it more complicated, and claim superiority through complexity. The Carlos system adds 3 additional components to the basic Bartholomew design. An extra safety mechanism that reduces accidental discharge but also increases reload time. A decorative engraving system that looks impressive but serves no functional purpose. And a proprietary ammunition cartridge that only Spanish gunsmiths can manufacture, ensuring dependence on Spanish supply chains. The Carlos system is objectively worse than the original Bartholomew design. It's heavier, it's less reliable, it costs 3 times as much to produce. But it allows Spanish officials to claim they developed superior Iberian technology rather than admitting they copied from pirates and then made it worse. Pride is expensive. The French, characteristically, try to improve rather than just copy. French gunsmiths actually study the mechanics, understand why each component matters, and create versions that in some cases exceed the original design's reliability. They call it the Système de Montmorency, named after, you guessed it, the spy who betrayed her mission and joined the pirates. Lucille de Montmorency eventually makes it back to France with detailed technical drawings. The French government quietly pardons her crimes and makes her an advisor to the National Armoury. But here's the critical thing about technological advantages. They don't last. The pirate advantage lasts exactly 18 months. 18 months from the Battle of Bloody Bay to the moment when Royal Navy ships start carrying weapons with comparable fire rates. That's the window. That's how long the pirates have before the playing field levels again. But in those 18 months, everything changes. Pirate raids during this period net an estimated 500 million pieces of 8 in additional wealth. 500 million. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to the annual economic output of a mid-sized European nation. That's not accumulated over decades, that's captured in 18 months. This money doesn't disappear. It doesn't vanish into treasure chests buried on beaches. It flows into the pirate economy. It funds the establishment of free ports, Nassau, Tortuga, Port Royal, where pirates can sell stolen goods, repair ships, and recruit crew without fear of arrest. It creates semi-autonomous pirate republics that operate with their own laws, their own courts, their own governments. Some of these pirate havens survive for decades after the so-called Golden Age of piracy officially ends. Nassau remains effectively independent until 1728. Port Royal operates as a semi-legitimate free port until the 1760s. The infrastructure created during those 18 months of technological advantage creates lasting political and economic changes. The insurance industry transforms almost overnight. Shipping insurance rates triple. Merchants who used to pay 5% of cargo value for insurance are suddenly paying 15% or more. Some routes become completely uninsurable at any price. This forces the creation of professional convoy systems. Merchant ships start traveling in groups, protected by naval escorts. This increases safety, but also increases costs and reduces efficiency. It takes longer to assemble convoys. Ships have to wait for escorts to become available. The free-flowing independent merchant trade that characterized the early 18th century Caribbean gives way to organized, controlled shipping lanes. Armed merchant marines become standard. Merchant vessels start carrying serious armament, not just a few swivel guns for show, but proper cannon and trained gunners. This increases operating costs, but becomes necessary for survival. The line between merchant vessel and warship blurs. All of these changes ripple outward, affecting global trade patterns. And here's where it gets really interesting. The innovation accelerates the Industrial Revolution. Think about it. Bartholomew's pistol requires precision-manufactured parts. The tolerances are tight, much tighter than traditional flintlocks. The springs need to be exactly the right tension. The rotating breech needs to fit precisely. The metal needs to be consistently high quality. This drives demand for better manufacturing tools. Lathes that can turn metal to precise specifications. Mills that can cut gears and springs with mathematical accuracy. Measurement tools that can verify tolerances down to fractions of an inch. The techniques developed to manufacture Bartholomew pistols transfer to other industries. Clockmaking improves dramatically as smiths apply lessons learned from weapons manufacturing. Textile machinery benefits from better springs and gears. Steam engine components become more reliable as metallurgy improves. Historians estimate the innovation accelerates industrial development by 15 to 20 years. Technologies that would have emerged in the 1740s show up in the 1720s and 1730s instead. The ripple effects are enormous. But let's talk about the human legacy, because that's what makes this story really matter. Former pirates become wealthy arms instructors. Men like Miguel Steady Hands Santos, who spent decades perfecting the art of rapid reload with traditional flintlocks, adapt to teaching the new technology. They don't just teach how to use the weapons, they teach the collaborative methods that created them. British naval academies grudgingly adopt workshop models where officers and common sailors innovate together. This is revolutionary. The Royal Navy has operated on rigid class hierarchy for centuries. Officers don't work alongside common sailors. Gentlemen don't take suggestions from working-class crew members. But the Bartholomew pistol proves that innovation comes from collaboration across social boundaries. By 1730, every major naval academy in Europe has some version of a collaborative workshop program. They don't call them pirate methods, obviously. They use terms like practical seamanship laboratories or applied naval engineering programs. But the model is the same. Bring together people with different skills and backgrounds, give them problems to solve, and let them figure it out together. This educational model spreads beyond naval contexts. Universities start creating similar programs. Craft guilds begin accepting cross-disciplinary collaboration. The rigid separation between theoretical knowledge and practical skill starts to break down. Chen Wei returns to China in 1727. We know this because Portuguese merchants report a Chinese gunpowder expert who revolutionizes imperial armory production using techniques unknown in Asia. He introduces Marcus's metal folding methods to Chinese smiths, creating hybrid techniques that produce weapons superior to anything available in Europe. Marcus the Forge disappears into legend. Some reports place him in West Africa in the 1730s, teaching advanced metalworking to tribal smiths. Others claim he settled in the American colonies, working under an assumed name and training a generation of American gunsmiths who will become crucial during the Revolutionary War decades later. The distinctive metal folding technique that Marcus used, creating layered steel with superior strength, shows up in American-made weapons throughout the mid-18th century. Father Francisco de Mendoza lives to age 79, dying peacefully in 1746 in a small monastery in Portugal. His notebooks detailed records of the Little Cayman workshop, including chemical formulas, spring tension calculations, and mathematical models are discovered after his death and eventually make their way to the Royal Society in London. Scientists studying the documents are amazed by the sophistication of the work, though official reports carefully avoid mentioning the pirate context. Quick Sam Samuel Morrison, though nobody calls him Quick anymore, becomes a successful merchant captain operating out of Philadelphia. He never pirates again after Bartholomew disappears, but he remains fiercely loyal to his former captain's memory. In 1742, Morrison publishes a memoir under a pseudonym titled The Brotherhood of the Breach. The authorities suppress it immediately, but copies circulate underground for decades, inspiring reformers and revolutionaries with stories of what happens when people from different backgrounds work together toward common goals. And then there's the last confirmed sighting of an original Bartholomew pistol, 1745. Portuguese merchants exploring the coast of Mozambique discover a sea cave accessible only at low tide. Inside, they find a skeleton, European, judging by the bone structure and the remnants of clothing. The skeleton is clutching a pistol. Not just any pistol. The craftsmanship is extraordinary beyond anything the Portuguese merchants have ever seen. The weapon features a rotating breech mechanism more advanced than anything in current production, with refinements that suggest decades of additional development beyond even the latest naval models. The spring system is so sophisticated that gunsmiths who examine it cannot figure out how to replicate the design even after taking it completely apart. The skeleton wears a clockmaker's ring, heavy silver, engraved with tools of the trade calipers, springs, gears. Inside the band, barely visible, is an inscription. Time reveals all truth. It's the ring Jonathan Bartholomew inherited from his master in Bristol, the ring he was wearing when he escaped from HMS Retribution, the ring that appears in every description of him throughout his pirate career. Did Bartholomew spend his final years in a cave in Mozambique, still innovating, still perfecting his design? Did he die alone, still working, still trying to make the weapons better? We don't know. The Portuguese merchants sell the ring to a collector. The pistol goes to a museum in Lisbon where it sits in a case, labelled simply Unknown Origin, circa 1745. Modern historians continue to debate Bartholomew's legacy. Some see him as a criminal who accelerated violence and instability. Others view him as an innovator who democratized warfare and proved that revolutionary ideas can come from society's outcasts. Both perspectives have merit. What's undeniable is this. A former clockmaker's apprentice, working with an escaped slave, a Chinese refugee, and a defrocked priest, revolutionized weapons technology in a mangrove-shrouded workshop on an uninhabited island. Their innovation changed naval warfare, disrupted global trade, influenced the Industrial Revolution, and demonstrated that genius can emerge from the most unlikely places when different minds collaborate toward a common goal. Museums from London to Beijing display reconstructed Bartholomew pistols. Collectors pay enormous sums for anything connected to the original workshop. Academic papers analyze the technical innovations and social implications. Hollywood occasionally makes terrible movies that get almost everything wrong. But here's what matters. None of the reconstructions work quite right. Modern gunsmiths, with all our advanced materials and precision manufacturing, cannot perfectly replicate the demon spring that made the original weapons so reliable. Something about Marcus's metal folding technique, or Chenway's powder formula, or Francisco's spring calculations, or Bartholomew's intuitive understanding of mechanical systems, something remains just out of reach. The secret died with them, probably in caves and workshops scattered across 3 continents, as each man pursued his own version of perfection in isolation after the Brotherhood dissolved. And maybe that's appropriate too. The weapon was never really the point. The point was what happened when desperate men from completely different worlds chose to work together rather than fight. The point was that innovation comes from collaboration. The point was that society's outcasts might understand something that respectable society misses. The point was that a pirate crew in a hidden cove changed the world, not through violence or treasure or conquest, but through genius born from desperation and refined through partnership. The gift was given, and freedom rang with every shot.